going on YouTube? This is BoxingWave. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also hit that like button. I appreciate it. Today is not going to be a long live. All right. I just want to talk a little bit about the fight from last night. And I also just want to discuss some of the things that I've always discussed about what is hurting the sport. You know what I'm saying? It's been, last night, Uncle Arthur, what's up, man? What's up, everyone that's joining in? Arlette, what's going on? How you doing? Everybody that's joining in, I just want to discuss a little bit about last night and moving forward. And let's get into it. I'm gonna get straight into it. I was gonna wait until some people join in, but they'll catch up. They'll catch up. Canelo destroys Yildirim last night in a fight that we all knew that was going to happen. Okay. The most of us knew that Canelo was going to run through this guy and it wasn't really going to be a competitive fight. We knew this. We knew that Yildirim was the WBC mandatory for the fight, and none of us wanted this fight. Okay. We all know what Canelo could do. We know his resume. We know who he's been in the ring with throughout his career recently. We know who he's fighting next, who is Billy Joe Saunders, who I love that fight. I've always wanted to see that fight. This is a fight that I brought up in the past ever since Canelo went up to 160. So I've been talking about this fight for years, and we all know this. Yildirim, no one wanted to see the fight. No one expected him to win. We got what we got, okay? But people are complaining. They are disappointed. It was trash, and it's trash because not so much because of Canelo. It's trash because the fight was actually sanctioned. All right. And there's no real reason behind it. Because if you look at Yildirim, if you look at his resume, you looked at what he's done recently, he's coming off a controversial loss, but he's coming off a loss and he's coming off a 2-year layoff. Why exactly is this guy even a mandatory? Why is he the mandatory? And I've said this before. Why are they making certain fighters? We already know how great Canelo Alvarez is. Why is this guy a mandatory? What's up, everyone? Just come in and hit that like button if you can. Jesus, Deuce, Arlette, Big Dog, PG, Big Dog, KRLB. I'm going to go straight into it today. All right. I know I'm trying to hold off. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fight and then I'm going to go in because there's a lot of things that I want to address here, but I won't be in here long. I'm tired of if it's ever going to improve, and hopefully this changes some things. The sanctioning bodies, they have to do better with their ranking system, because if you look at the most recent fights, all right, if you look at all these mandatories recently, they're horrible. They're horrible. Like, how do you, if you just look and I was talking about the UFC. In the UFC, the way it works is that when you're the champion, you have to fight the #1 ranked guy. All of the time. You're always basically fighting your mandatory. Now, some occasions you might fight guys in different weight divisions, but it's usually the king of either the smaller division, the champion at the smaller division, maybe the champ above you, whatever way it works. Maybe it's 2 superstars that'll clash. You'll get some of those. But usually if you're in the UFC, right? If you're going to fight, if you're the number 10th ranked guy, in order for you to become the 7th ranked guy, you have to beat the 7th ranked guy. And if you beat that guy and now you're ranked number 7, they might place you against the number 3 guy that's going to move you up to number 3 spot if you choose to win, or if you happen to win. And then you're just inching closer to that #1 spot. That's how the UFC works. Whereas in boxing, people just magically appear at the #1 or the #2 spot. Some guys go up a couple weight classes and then they just magically appear at the number 1 or 2, or some of them will come off a loss and they'll just randomly place them at the number 3 spot. It's weird how. What's up, everyone? I see you guys. I just want to address some of these things. But I see you guys, Sam Greer, Rob, Centurion Son. What's up, everyone that's joining? Make sure you hit the like button. Yo, boxing is strange. And last night, I heard some channels talking after the fight. I'm here. I'm reading the comments. I'm listening to the people that's joining their live chats, and everybody goes straight into fanboy mode, and we escape all logic. We know Canelo is the man. He's number 1 on my pound for pound list, so there's no hate towards Canelo. All right, but at the end of the day, Avni Yildirim should never share the ring with Canelo Alvarez. Under no circumstances should a guy that got knocked out in a few rounds by Chris Eubank Jr. should share a ring with Canelo Alvarez, especially when they're coming off a 2-year layoff, especially when they're coming off of a loss. There's no reason a guy at that level should ever share the ring with Canelo Alvarez. Ever. It was just so, it's like we all expected it, but when it happens, it's like, wow. You know, no hate towards Canelo. I know what he just did. I know what he's doing next, Saunders. But Jesus, the WBC, what are they doing? And we cannot just go on the WBC, because this is where I'm going to go with this now. I'm going to give you examples. Caleb Plant. Who is he fighting? Caleb Truax. Well, it's his mandatory. He has to fight him. Why is Caleb Truax a mandatory? Why? What is he doing to be number 1? Why is he being mandated? Why does Caleb have to fight this guy in order to keep his title? Oh, wait. He had 2 mandatories in a row. He fought Vincent Feigenboots right before that. Why is Vincent Feigenboots number 1? Why? But it's not just the WBC. It could be anybody, because if you look at the IBF, now we all say the IBF is the most, I guess, the best sanctioning body, right? They're strict on their mandatories. They're consistent with it. Why was Triple G fighting Sarametta? Why was he the mandatory? Why? Triple G was toying with this guy. He was taking it easy. He was spreading the rounds out. But we know that Triple G, whenever he wanted, he could have got him out of there. Right? And this is the IBF. It's not the WBC. It's not the WBA. It's not the WBO. This is the IBF. Triple G, great fighter. Gave Canelo hell in 2 fights. Knocked a bunch of guys out in a row. Had a bunch of title defenses. All right? Great middleweight. Nothing but love. But why the hell was he fighting Sarametta as a mandatory? Why Sarametta? Why? I'm thinking logically, if you're the number 1 guy, it's because you've earned to fight for a title. You really beat the best people to get there. We didn't get that for Sarametta. We didn't get that from Avni Yildirim. We didn't get that from Vincent Feigenboots. We didn't get that from Caleb Truax. We didn't get that from Burmester Vern in the Wilder rematch. And you know why I'm naming different people? Because I know how you fanboys come. You're going to come here and like, oh, why are you picking on Canelo? Stop picking on Canelo. I love Canelo. I love Triple G. But let's be real. Fighting boots? Plant is cool. I don't have no problems with him. He's a good fighter. Fighting boots and Caliber Truex? Berman Stavern in a rematch? What did Berman Stavern do ever since he lost to Wilder? What did he do? How did he earn a mandatory position? I did a long video maybe last year, the year before, about Wilder and Whyte and how Whyte just kept getting passed over and gets skipped over. He's beating legit heavyweights, and somehow guys like Berman Stavern becomes mandatory. All right, somehow Dominic Brazil will become a mandatory. It's not just the WBC. And then you got the WBA that got all these weird, if you guys ever look at the WBA and their rankings, it's ridiculous. You go to fightnews.com or whatever, it shows you the top champion, right? So you got the super champion, you got the world champion, you have the gold champion, and then you have the rankings. There's so many people. How do you even keep that organized? Like, how do you even determine who actually fights with the title? Because you got, like, at 135, you got Tank Davis now, who beats Leo Santa Cruz, who just moved up. He just moves up, right? He gets a title shot. He has a title at 130. Tank beats him up, knocks him out. And when you look at it, you would think that Chris Colbert should be getting his title shot next. But I don't hear anything from Chris Colbert about him fighting Tank. I don't hear anything about Tank fighting Chris Colbert. And it's just like, what's going on with this? Like, is this going to be just kept on a low? Is no one going to say anything about this? Because I would love to see Chris Colbert fight Tank Davis instead of Tank Davis just keep pulling guys up to the division to fight him. I would love for that to happen. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what's going on? How did Gamboa fight for a title at 135, even though it wasn't a super title? How did Gamboa get a title shot of any sort at 135? Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's talk about the WBC and welterweight. Oh, and I'm going to talk about people I love. I love Floyd Mayweather. Love Floyd Mayweather to death. One of my favorite fighters of all time. Love Floyd. He fought great fighters. Him and Pacquiao, they both fought good fighters back to back. They always fought good fighters. No matter what, they fought former champions or current champions. They all fought good fighters. They both did. Now, everybody's going around saying, well, Pacquiao could do whatever he wants. Now, Floyd was still boxing, not exhibitions. Would we say the same for him? Will he still get that same treatment? Probably not. But the one thing about Floyd, and I love him to death, didn't fight those mandatories. He didn't. Keith Thurman was one. Erislandy Lara was a mandatory for a minute. You got to remember, Floyd held titles at 147 and 154 simultaneously. But he didn't fight Lara. And what did I say back then, years ago? Lara was the hardest, would have been the hardest fight for Floyd, stylistically. And I'm not talking about name. I'm not talking about, no, I'm just talking about styles. You fighting another fighter, long, lefty, moves well, great timing. Would have been a difficult match for Floyd. He would have had to really work hard for that fight. Lara would have been a very tough fight for Floyd. I'm not saying Floyd would have lost. I'm just saying that that's not one of those fights that Floyd would have just been easily winning. You feel me? And then going back down to what I was just about to say, the WBC. The WBC, Danny Garcia. I don't got no problems with Danny. I like Danny, But Danny as a welterweight, not at 140, but as a welterweight, he got a lot of treatment that a lot of fighters don't get. He kept getting mandatory positions after losing. He'd lose a fight or whoever in between, and get a mandatory spot right away. Between him and Sean Porter, they will always be one or the other, was always the WBC mandatory. Danny comes up and beat Robert Guerrero, right? Beats Robert Guerrero. Robert Guerrero was at the beginning of the downslope of his career. He already lost. He lost to Floyd, cool. A lot of people lost to Floyd. But you lost to Keith Thurman. After you lost to Keith Thurman, you didn't have any solid wins over any credible people at 147. But somehow, he gets a title shot for the vacant title at the time. Danny Garcia wins the fight, right? But Danny eventually loses to like a Sean Porter. You know, he lost to Keith Thurman. He lost to Sean Porter. But in between these fights, he would beat guys like a Ivan Redkach. He would beat guys like Adrian Granados, Brandon Rios. And these little wins, because they're little wins, these little wins kept getting him another WBC mandatory spot. But when he got the title shot, he would always lose. And some of the fights were close. Yeah, Keith Thurman was very competitive. Sean Porter was very competitive. But you're just keeping the same guy at the same, he keep giving the same guy the same opportunity over and over again, back to back to back. Yet, a lot of you guys are saying that Terrence Bud Crawford ain't do anything at 147. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, Danny moved up just like Bud did from 140. But Bud was undisputed at 140. He comes up winning a title. He beats a guy that just beat Manny Pacquiao. Whether you agreed with it or not, it's not about that. But all I keep hearing is Bud didn't fight Danny. What did Danny do at 147? I could bring up any fighter from any race, from any network, promoter, all those guys that you guys got serious biases for, any background, and they all did the same thing. And that's what inspired me to make this video, because I was listening to channels. What's up? I'm Ryo. Thank you for the donation, indeed, as well. I was listening to you. I saw you last night with I think it was on Punch Drunk channel. I was listening to a little bit of that, and I was reading some of the comments, and I was listening to a little bit of Ring IQ. Shout out to all these channels. Make sure you guys subscribe. But good channels. I was listening to some of them, and I was like saying to myself, you know, fans are getting upset for Canelo. And look, Canelo, I didn't want Canelo to fight this dude. Canelo did what he was supposed to do. They put him up against trash, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do against trash. But why does this keep happening? Why Burmester Vern rematch? If you guys are just getting in, Burmester Vern 2, Vincent Feigen boots, Calla Truax, these are all mandatories. What's Billy Joe Saunders, vacant title shot against Isufu or Sufi, whatever that guy name was. Why was he getting a vacant title shot? A Sufi. Why was he getting a vacant title shot? Why him? Why him? What did he do to make his way to the number one spot? What did he do? This is my problem with these sanctioning bodies. Now, sometimes, and this is what I have a problem with too, with fighters. Like I mentioned Floyd earlier, didn't really fight any mandatories. Well, sometimes people like Canelo, and I know you're going to get mad, but I don't care. Canelo, whenever the mandatory happened to be a real fight, people are saying this about Lomachenko. That's the time to move up in weight. That's the time to vacate a title or become franchise. Are you guys get where I'm going with this? When the mandatory is a legit dude, that's the time when a fighter moves up in weight and the fight never happens. They all did it. And this is why, and this is the point that I'm making. This is what the video is about. This is not a fanboy video. This is about all these fighters do it. Fanboys are going to defend their favorite fighter to the death. They don't care about logic. They're not being rational. They all have done it. They all have done it. And they will continue to do it. That's the time to move up in weight. Let me accept this franchise title. Now I don't have to worry about mandatories anymore. But now at a different weight, the rules are changing. You know what I'm saying? It's a problem. I blame the sanctioning bodies because the sanctioning bodies are here for the money. They want to make money. They want to sanction fights where they're going to get a lot of return, financial gain from. So it is very important to accommodate certain fighters that are going to make a certain amount of dollars for them. It's bad enough we have the sanction. I mean, bad enough we have the promoters to deal with. Bad enough we have networks that these fighters sign to, and they want to stay exclusive with these networks and stuff. Teofimo Lopez is going through that right now with Bob Arum. Bad enough that we have promoters and networks that fighters are exclusive to. Joshua and AJ. I'm sorry, Joshua, AJ. Wilder and Joshua. A lot of these fights are not happening because it's not even the fighters, to be honest. A lot of it is not happening because the promoters, the networks are trying to protect their investment. But if we're being honest, if we're going to be really honest with ourselves, all of these fights have done, all of these fighters have moved in a certain direction in order to avoid fighters, tough challenges that weren't worth the risk financially. All of these fighters have done it in some form or fashion. I was talking about this the other week with Adrian Broner. They'll keep saying Broner's a 4-division weight champion. Yeah, but who did he beat in those 4 divisions? Give him credit. He did his thing at 135, but when he moved up after that, who did he beat? Who did he beat? Who? Did he beat a top dog in order to win a title? No, he did not. Not one. It's not one. So, I don't know, man. I hope last night, I don't know what we can do because we want to see Canelo fight. Like, that fight last night should have been a boycott. So should have Caleb Plant against Truax. So should Triple G against Sarametta. So should have been Wilder against Stavern too. These mandated fights where it's just a complete mismatch. We should just avoid these fights and not support these fights. But we love boxing too much. We're still going to tune in. We still want to support the fighters that we love. We know Canelo is about to fight Billy Joe Saunders. We know Canelo just beat Callum Smith, beat Kovalev, beat what's this other guy's name? Daniel Jacobs. He's been beating good fighters consistently. We know what he's doing, but it should never be on a guy at that level. That guy didn't even come out of his corner. He legit quit. I mean, he was going to get knocked out anyway, but we as boxing fans, what exactly can we do to avoid this kind of situation where a guy like Canelo is just, we don't get enough fights from the fighters to get that kind of trash. We don't get enough. We don't get enough from them. And I've said this before, and I don't want to come off like I'm contradicting myself, because I just said Canelo, if anybody's going to fight 4 times a year, they deserve a tune-up. I just said that. If a guy is going to fight 4 times a year, yeah, you deserve a tune-up. Goes back to the great Julio Cesar Chavez, who had a lot of tune-up type fights on his resume. All right? He had a lot of those. I get it. But the guy was very, very active. He was very, very active. So, yeah, I get it. You get a pass. But especially coming off of the pandemic, where we're not really getting much of boxing. We're not really getting much. And that's one of the highlights of the sport. That shouldn't be a highlight. That's not. Yes, Canelo is at a different standard because he is number one. He is number one. So when the number one in the world, when the number one fighter fights in the world, we shouldn't see him fighting guys on that level. We just shouldn't do it. It's just not a good look for boxing. It's not. It's not a good look. Even for Canelo, it's not a good look. It's just not a good look. Like, I would hate to have. I used to throw a lot of fight parties, and I would hate to have invited people over to watch this fight. We're sitting down, we're having our drinks, we're eating our pizza and our wings, and we're sitting here watching Canelo beat the living shit out of Avni Yildirim. It might have been me. It just put me in the ring. At that point, take anyone from the crowd and say, yeah, you fight Canelo tonight, because Avni Yildirim is not going to do shit to Canelo. But I blame the WBC. You know, so I just had to go on my little rant today because, again, a lot of these times it's not the fighters. You know, a lot of the times I feel like it's the sanctioning body. They have to enforce. They have to do better. You know, they gotta really do better, because this can't keep happening. Like, these kind of fights just can't. We can't keep doing this. You know, and it's not just the WBC. It's all of the sanctioning bodies. All of them have moved. Some of them have made some really legit, you know, mandatories. Some of them are legit. And sometimes the mandatories do pass up on opportunities. That's a whole nother thing. You know, but look, if you're a mandatory fighter and you have an opportunity and you're up to get your challenge and you back out of the fight, boom, well, you get knocked down 10 slots. You go from number 1 to number 10, because now it's your turn to get to the title. And because the champion that you don't want to face is the champion, you want to avoid that fighter, then you get knocked down 10 slots. You know? That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. But it's not all of the sanctioning body. It is the fighter sometimes, because the fighters do avoid certain fighters. Some fighters move up, vacate, become franchise, whatever. All right. So we have to all agree what we need to do as boxing fan is point out and identify the issue and stop just trying to go to target a certain fighter or group of fighters. You know, you guys do too much of that, because I see it a lot. If you just come here, RC, you must just got here because I already addressed Dillian Whyte, and I've addressed him in other videos, and how he should have gotten his shot against Wilder a long time ago. Okay, Wilder fighting Brazil, fighting Stavern twice, is something I don't agree with, and I had a problem with the sanctioning by the WBC since then. But it's not the WBC. It's not just them, because it's the IBF too. Again, Triple G, Sarah Meta. Another fight where you have an elite level fighter, a pound for pound-ish level fighter that's fighting a guy that has done absolutely nothing to get there. Yes, he kept winning, but he didn't beat anyone good. He didn't beat anyone that made anyone believe that he was going to give Triple G any type of problems. you know? And we got to stop targeting the fighters. We have to target the sanctioning bodies because they are the problem. Shout out to everyone that's here. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Canelo Local Sports, what up, man? Charles Edward Cheese, Emmanuel, Loke, everyone that's here. George, Jorge, Ernest. Shout out to everyone that's in here. High Tech, shout out to you. Everyone that was here last night. A lot of y'all was here last night. We was just chatting it up, watching the fight. So Billy Joe Saunders is next. Billy Joe Saunders is next, and I love the fight. What I wanted to ask you guys, and I'm definitely going to do like a full breakdown. How then would I define who is worthy? Based on their resume. Based on his resume. You know, I always bring up the UFC. You know how these guys move up in ranks. All right. They're beating guys that is ranked. You know, you're in the sanctioning body, you beat other fighters in that rank, those rankings to get pushed up. What I'm saying is certain fighters are magically moved to certain positions. So you beat a specific fighter that is ranked, you move up. You know, now all of them, it doesn't happen that way. Some guys work their way up. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And that's why I said I brought up Caleb Truax. I'm only bringing up people based on their resume. How did Abney Yildirim become number one? How did Vincent Feigenboots become number one? How did Sarah Meta become number one? How did Stavern become number one? If someone could break what Stavern did in between his first loss to Wilder to his second loss to Wilder, if someone could explain what he did, then I'm all ears. I'm here for it. That's what I'm here for. I'm reading the comments. All right. But yeah, these guys, most of them not really doing too much. A lot of these are tune-ups, and they're making them mandatories to allow the tune-up because usually, especially when it's a bigger name fighter, a cash cow in some sort, the mandatory is the setup for the bigger fight that's soon to come. And I understand that at times, but still, like Yildirim, way below Canelo. He's way below. Again, Chris Eubank, easy work for him. So I would think if Chris Eubank can get him out of there quickly, I would think Canelo could too. You know, that's just the logic, especially if the guy is not active. Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders, to me, is legit. To me, is legit. Always thought that Lara was Canelo's toughest fight outside of the loss of Floyd. I thought that Lara was Canelo's toughest fight. Okay. I see a lot of Lara and Billy Joe Saunders, but I think Saunders is a little better. Okay. Lara, great straight left, sniper with that straight left. Moves extremely, at least at that time. He sits in the pocket a lot more. He's older. I don't think he has the same legs. But at that time, Lauro was around his prime. And Saunders, great hand speed, great combinations, great feet, you know, great counterpuncher. He's a good boxer. I'm assuming he's going to be on his A game. The only times he really didn't look impressive to me and when he clearly was overweight, fighting lower opposition. Okay, I think he's at his best when he steps up. I don't think he's going to win the fight, but I think he is going to win rounds. I think he's going to win rounds. I think he's going to win rounds against Canelo. Well, I know Lara did not beat Canelo because the judges picked Canelo to win. So in that sense, yes. But me and a lot of other people, a lot of people that know boxing believe that Lara won the fight. We could disagree, but I'm not going to stay on it all day. I think Saunders is a good fight. I think out of the two, I think out of everyone at 168, I would say not Lara. I think Saunders and Benavidez are the top two most challenging fights for Canelo Alvarez. All right. I would like to say that Saunders is a bigger threat than Callum Plant is. Okay. Uh I think he's a bigger threat than Callum Smith was. Uh I think he's a bigger threat than Daniel Jacobs was. Just my opinion. It's my opinion. I think Billy Joe Saunders is going to bring a better fight than Daniel Jacobs, Callum Smith. Yeah, and I think that's fair. So I like the fight. A thorough breakdown is on the way. But I do have Canelo winning that fight. I do see Canelo winning that fight. All right. Khan gave Canelo trouble. Yeah, I see you, Emmanuel. Khan gave Canelo trouble, but I think a lot of that trouble was him setting up to knock out Amir Khan. You know what I'm saying? I think that Khan is one of those guys where, you know what, you just got to wait for the sweet spot to come. And I think that at that point, Khan was just exiting his prime. Khan was still very fast. He had a couple solid wins at welterweight. And I think, Khan can be that guy that can give anyone trouble. But certain styles are just a nightmare for him. Jorge, I think Lara lost to Molina. I think Carlos Molina beat Lara. I remember that was a 10-round fight, and I had scored it from Molina 6 rounds to 4. I thought that was a gift for Lara. I think that was the only fight that I think he actually really lost. Lara. And he lost to Jarrett Hurd. Jarrett Hurd won with the knockdown. But Carlos Molina, Lara at the time was on Friday Night Fights. And I think that, Lara was a guy coming up that was loved on ESPN. And I think at that time, he was undefeated still. And Carlos Molina wasn't he didn't have a large fan base. His style was not liked by many, and they gave Lara a gift win. It is what it is. I think Castaño versus Lara was a draw, to be honest. Sean, I think that was an actual draw. I scored it 6-6. But I'm not mad at people that think Castaño won. Lara clearly beat Paul Williams, yes. Lara definitely beat Paul Williams. I think the Lara and the Vanes Monterosian fight, I think that was another one that could be very debatable, very debatable one too. I think it was stopped. It was like a technical draw. I think it was a headbutt that stopped that fight. All right. Wasn't really a good performance by neither. Lara has a lot of those fights where you just hated him, Then he has some really good ones, but there were fights there that were, that people just hated because of his style. All right. Some people at 168 that I think should be mandatories. I think even though David Benavidez screwed himself, I think he should be right back there. I mean, I know he screwed himself by not making weight, but I don't think it should take much for him to be back. We think Lemieux should kind of be getting close to a mandatory, maybe a title shot in the future. Maybe a fight between him and Darrell, maybe something like that would be good. Daniel Jacobs, I think he would need a good win in order to get himself into a mandatory position. Who else do we have here? I'm just looking down some of the risks. John Wright is another guy's name that you could put out there. He, when getting a good win, should put him in a mandatory position because I think he beat Callum Smith. All right. I think Gabe Rosado should probably have gotten a win against Daniel Jacobs that fight too. I don't think he should be a mandatory, but I think if he were to get another win or two or like good ones, maybe put him there. Edgar Berlanga, still a prospect to me. Still want to see more fights before we even mention him as a top contender, in my opinion. I'm trying to think who else am I really, really familiar with? I think those are some good names. Well, if Charlos and Andrade were to move up, they should definitely be in position, But I would like to see them fight someone at 168 that's relevant, or fight each other. Charlo and Andrade should have fought each other a long time ago. I don't know what the wait is for. Andrade, it seems to be interested. Charlo doesn't seem to be interested, So it is what it is. All right. Anyone here in the comments section? Yeah. Well, that's what. Yeah, I agree with you, Kano. I agree. Benavidez, number one in WBC. Yes, he got stripped. But he should have, I think, one meaningful fight should put him right back in position to fight for a title again. He screwed himself out of the title, but I think a good fight can get him right in, as long as he makes weight. But if I have to rank top fighters at the division to give Canelo a good shot, I will probably slightly give Benavidez a better chance at beating Canelo than Billy Joe Saunders. That's just my opinion. If I had to pick anyone that's below 175, I would say Benavidez. I would say Benavidez, and then I would say Saunders after Benavidez. Or I really want to see Andre fight Canelo. I really think that's a good fight. I would probably put Andrade up there. Andrade and Saunders was supposed to happen. I wish Andrade and Saunders happened so bad. If that fight happened, it would answer a whole lot of questions that I have about Saunders and Andrade. But because that fight never went down, I really don't know, because Andrade looks like a guy that would give Canelo a lot of trouble, but his resume is very poor. It's very poor resume. But what I will say is Liam Williams is not bad. In fact, Williams can crack. And let me tell you something. If Andrade is not cautious in that fight and he starts fighting really wild like he does and he has in certain fights, he'll get caught and he'll get knocked out if he's not careful. No, Cody, you're right, and I'm not going to argue with you. I agree. I mean, Benavidez, Saunders has a better resume, and both Callum Smith does too, than Benavidez on paper. Yes, there's no way to really prove that. Talent-wise, I'm just going based on the eye test. I have no way to prove that. It's just my opinion, and that's it. I would want to see Benavidez against Canelo. Now, if Canelo destroys them, Canelo fights Benavidez and he destroys them the same way he did against Callum Smith, then I'm gonna be like, hey, you know what? I thought Benavidez was a top guy. Maybe he still is. It's just that Canelo's just so good, he makes people look bad. But I like Liam. I think Liam Williams is a pretty solid fight for Andrade. And that's all I gotta really say. He's good, but that's not who I want to see neither, What did Callum Smith and Billy Joel do to deserve a fight with Canelo and Andrade didn't? What did Callum Smith do? He beat George Groves. He beat John Ryder, technically. He beat Rocky Fielding quicker than Canelo did, and he won the World Boxing Super Series. I think that's pretty good enough. As far as Billy Joe, did a lot more at 160. He gave Chris Eubank his first loss. He beat Andy Lee, that had just coming off of knocking out Matt Korobov, who was undefeated at the time. He beat David Lemieux easier than anybody else beat him before. I mean, if you're gonna go there, I still believe that Canelo. I mean, I don't know. I mean, was there anybody that did more than those two at 168 that's currently there? Did anybody else that's, I don't know, let me know in the comments. Well, Billy Joe Saunders isn't the cleanest guy. I don't like him. I just think he boxes well. All right. I believe testing dirty leading up to the Andre fight made me question his real ability. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to really say. I think that's my main issue with Billy Joe Saunders. Nah, nobody does, Brendan. No one does. I don't think anyone. Well, I mean, I don't know. I know I'm not arguing that about Canelo. Canelo definitely has the best resume, and I think that no matter what we see, even the Yildirim fight, what I was making up in my Yildirim Canelo video, there are double standards. If some of these other fighters like Andrade, like Charlo, like even a Benavidez, like a Billy Joe Saunders, these guys would fight guys at Yildirim's level often. Okay? We're mad that Canelo fought him, but at the same time, it would have been okay if all of these other guys fought Yildirim. But since Canelo fought him, it's an issue. But yeah, Canelo is good to a point where he shouldn't be fighting guys on his level, and I don't blame him for that. I blame the WBC because they forced that fight. They forced that fight. So, yeah. All right, guys. Quick video today. Not gonna stay on long. I gotta get up out of here and get some things done. But I got more content. Either coming back, probably be back on later tonight or early in the morning. A lot of good fights coming up. A lot of breakdowns I got to do because the fights are really starting to happen now. Chocolatito against Estrada is coming up soon, so I have to do a breakdown for that. Saunders and Canelo got to do a breakdown for that. Whyte versus Vacant 2, got to do a breakdown for that. A lot of good fights coming up. So be on the lookout for all of those. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. All right. Love y'all. Peace.